First of all, on behalf of Crossroads, everyone welcome. We know the weather is not ideal for, well, it's actually not too bad driving, but still nice everyone come out on a return of winter night. So, and I just found out this is going to be recorded. So if it's something you want to share, you have that opportunity. So welcome. And we're, again, on behalf of Crossroads, we're excited to have you all here. This is a topic longevity medicine, I've been focused on for the last 2-3 years. I believe this is the future of sports medicine, health, wellness. Not the future, but it's a big part of it. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, aging because of the booming market. People want to not only live longer, they want to live healthy, and it's exploding all over the country. We have books coming out, Peter Attia's book, Outlive. Excellent book, by the way, well written. If you have a chance, I would highly recommend reading it. Life Force, Tony Robbins. He talks a little bit about the biologics as well, which is really booming as well, stem cells and all the regenerative medicine things. And we offer some of these things here in the Valley. And then, of course, there's Fountain Life, which has centers all over the country where you can go and they do the full body MRIs, early screening for cancer, genome testing. The Human Longevity Clinic is the one in San Diego. I went there 2 years ago. I have some clients here who've been there, and they do the full body MRIs to see if these are scans to see if they can connect early with cancer or any other type of arteriosclerosis disease, heart tests that are very advanced, and books. So it's a booming industry, and I think it does us well to understand it a little bit because there's so much information coming out. It's good to put a little time into it. Health span is the big term in these industries. It's basically saying, can you delay or stop disease and extend the good, healthy part of your life into later life? And can you enhance your quality of life to have a better life as we age? Spend time with your grandchildren or continue to ski and just be happy that you're not dealing with disease. The agenda tonight. Okay, I'm going to ask you to give me a little leeway for about 5 minutes. I'd like to talk about the human body. I know we're all here to talk about aging and staying young and healthy, but I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about the human body relevant to creation, the universe, because I think if you could see that spectrum of the connection, you will appreciate the miracle of the human body that much more. Then we'll go overview of the revel and the miracle of the human body. We'll dive into what is the human body. And then I'll explain aging from a unique perspective. I've kind of taken things I've learned from books and courses, but I think I have a different perspective that I want to share with you that even some of you who've studied wellness might not have heard it explained in this manner. Then, of course, the interventions for health and aging and longevity, and then take the last few minutes to discuss purpose, grace, wisdom as we age, and how we use our health to really make a difference in the lives of others. Okay, so that's the agenda. So real quick, the universe. How big is the universe? I am so flabbergasted by this slide. I can't put it in perspective. Are there more stars or grains in the universe or grains of sand on the earth? So look at the hand of that person and how many grains of sand are rolling through that hand just in that little hand? 1,000, 10,000, 100,000? That's just in her hand. Now imagine the whole beach, how many grains of sand are on a beach. Then think of a state and all the beaches in the state. Then think of a country, then think of the world. There are more stars, and keep in mind the sun is a star, and there's stars in the universe that are 100 times bigger than the sun. And the sun is 100 times bigger than the earth approximately. It's flabbergasting. But there are more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on the earth. Put that in perspective. So there are estimated to be, the number is 70 sextillion. It's 22, and it's 70, followed by 22 zeros. That's how many stars there are in the universe. We can't fathom how big that is. And then sand, there's about 7.5, these are numbers I've never heard of, quintillion, followed by 18 zeros. The comparison, this means there are nearly 10,000 stars for every grain of sand on the earth. Can you appreciate the majestic creation, how big this thing is beyond our wildest imagination? It's flabbergasting. So it's majestic, it's infinite. Many scientists believe the universe continues to expand, infinity, so to speak. And that's funny. That's a picture of a galaxy, and I chose that because that's the infinity sign. And of course, from a biblical perspective, for those who walk by faith, the same creator of the universe that created this magic, this majestic, unlimited universe created our human bodies, created humanity. Book of Genesis. Now, as I show you some videos coming up, can you recognize similarities in the universe and the human body? Galaxies, solar systems going out, but coming inside of us and looking at molecular atoms and the connection of protons, and it's how it's all interwoven together. See if you can see the connections. And just one last note, as we go out into the universe, I love this slide, let there be light, Genesis 1:3. Anyone know what the speed of light is? Per second. So in the lightest speed of light is 186,000 miles per second. So that 3 seconds it took me to say that, light has traveled around the planet 24 times. The planet has a circumference of 24,000 miles. So in 1 second, it travels around the world in about 7.6 times, something like that. So in 3 seconds, it's 24 times in a second. Okay. When we go out and explore the universe now, they use terms light years. How far does a ray of light travel in 1 light year? Throw a number out. Okay, it's crazy, so I'll just give it to you. It's like 5.5 trillion miles. That's a light year. We're going to go out 10 billion light years. Put that in perspective. 10 billion light years times 10 billion times 5.5 trillion. I don't know what the number is. Let there be light. And with that, see if you can see the similarities that I see. Amazing, huh? I watch that video sometimes 2, 3 times a day, and it brings me so much peace to see the connection of the body to the universe and the creation. And if you wanted the link to it, I'll share it with you. But it's just humbling to put it in perspective. Okay, welcome to Physics 101. You didn't know you were coming to a physics lecture, but does anyone remember Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared? M is mass, right? C is the speed of light, squared, okay, and energy. My point to you tonight is everything regarding aging entails mass and energy. Aging, wellness, disease, to a large degree, is about energy. Not so much light energy, but chemical reactions. Every day, your body has billions and billions of chemical reactions. You build muscle up, you tear muscle down. You digest food, your immune system fights disease. These are all processes of energy. And if you have efficient energy, your body is functioning well. Poor energy, and you're in the path of disease. Energy is the equation that I want you to remember through this lecture. The miracle of the human body. There are about 300 billion cells that are replaced daily. That's about 1% daily. The majority are blood cells. They renew daily. Skin, we got a skin doctor in here, so Kenny's here somewhere. So there's Kenny, we got a dermatologist. So, talk to Kenny after. He hates privacy, and if you have some skin issues. Skin cells are renewed weekly. In 80 to 100 days, 30 trillion cells have been replaced in you. 30 trillion cells, basically every month. Now, it's a little bit of a misconception because we think that's a new you. It's not in the sense that not all cells are reproducing at that rate. In a healthy adult, bone cells are replaced every 10 years, about 10% a year. Skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle can last for decades, and nerve has less ability to regenerate. But as I'll talk about tonight, you have the ability to regenerate brain cells, neurogenesis, under the right environment. This was a book series I was involved with. It's kind of like one of the first early books that really marketed, aging and wellness. And it was Chris Crowley, and I was involved in the second book, the Younger Next Year Exercise Program. This was a bestseller, and it was paved the way for other books and where we are now, I think. But Chris is an eclectic guy, for those who know him, and he's pretty raunchy in the way he speaks to make his point across, but he makes it across. This is the tide of aging, the default to decay. That is aging. You rot away. You either rot or you grow. And when you ever hear him speak, he makes that point very clear. You're rotting away or you're growing. That's aging. And the main message of the book is 70% of all disease, illness is related to lifestyle. You have a choice in how you age, and you can delay a lot of these diseases or prevent them altogether. I'm going to talk to you about, again, from that perspective of energy systems and aging, and see if you can connect this metaphor, because I think it hits it right on the head. A system is a set of things working together as parts or of a mechanism or interconnecting network. They have objectives and purpose, and each part of the system works for the greater good of the whole. Biblical overtones there. So, how many of you have had a house remodel or been involved in a house remodel? This will hit what aging is home right away. You have an electrical team. Say you have 3 electricians working on your house. Then you have the plumber, and they're all working at the same time. Then you have the guys building up the house, the 3 construction guys, say, we'll use 3 as a number, and 3 of the guys breaking the house down. Okay. Of each of these teams, one guy on each team comes in with a bad ankle sprain. Not bad enough to keep them from working, but they're hobbling and trying to get work done. The other one the next day comes in with food poisoning. He's not enough to keep him out of work, but he's still coming. The third guy in the team is so tired and he's overloaded, he's not doing a good job. Each team connects. So the electrical team isn't doing their job, which is slowing down the plumbing, and the plumbing team is falling apart. They're all systems. You have an electrical system, a plumbing system, construction buildup, and pretty soon, what do you think happens to the project? And we've all been there with house remodels, and we know this. The project comes to a slow progression. It gets done, but it doesn't get done quite with the quality it did before everyone was falling apart. Eventually, one of the teams completely falls apart, which affects all the other teams, and then the whole project goes kaput. That, in summary, is aging. Okay? Each system, which is dependent on the other system, affects every system till it's not functioning. That's aging. Aging, second law of thermodynamics, back to the physics. That's a photo of a gas being released from a container. Where does the gas go when it's released? Anywhere and everywhere. There's no space to confine it. That's the law of entropy. When you take a system and nothing's applied to it, it's a complete lack of order. It's a gradual decline to disorder. These are laws of thermodynamics and physics. All systems trend towards disorganization. You can even look at a garden. If you start to plant a garden, right? You plant the seeds, and you put everything in there. But just say you leave it alone. What happens? Chaos. The weeds start to grow. They take over. Then they block the sun. Then the plants you block that are supposed to be growing aren't growing. They're dying. Unless you intervene, the system completely falls apart. Aging is simply the deregulation of all body systems, unless there's an outside energy, or not an outside, unless there's an energy system, not an energy to intervene. You have to apply energy to regulate and create order. That is aging. Fundamental building blocks of life, we have cells. Cells that work together form tissues. Tissues that work like muscle and bone, etc. Tissues that work together form organs like your heart. And all these systems come together, organs come together in this whole system to form systems. You have a nervous system to send impulses. You have a musculoskeletal system to move. You have a cardiovascular system to send blood to all these tissues. A respiratory system, which is critical, oxygen, I'll talk about that. An endocrine system, a digestive system, reproductive, urinary. They're all systems. Go back to the construction analogy I gave earlier. They're interdependent on it. And if one system starts to break, it's going to affect the other system. So, are you aging healthy or unhealthy? And I put this photo of this sweet old lady there, my grandmother, to make the point that whether you have gray hair or wrinkly is not a component of whether you're aging healthy or not. I'm starting to get some gray hairs. I'm well past starting. But it's wrinkles and skin color, or your skin going hair going gray, is very little to do with whether you're aging healthy. At some point, we always use the word, are you healthy or not? But we have to give a definition to it. The definition I think I like is, it's a reduction in Western society diseases and risk factors, high blood pressure, et cetera. And you're avoiding heart attacks and heart disease and atherosclerosis and adult onset diabetes and Alzheimer's and dementia. If you can avoid those things, and you are avoiding those things, you're healthy. The other area I like to add to that is quality of life. Are you moving well, right? Are you thinking well? Is your memory working well? Are you emotionally stable? Are you spiritually stable? That's one I add to there. How do you feel, spiritually? And then that has a big part to do with health. But quality of life, what good is it to get older if you don't have good quality of life? So there's a connection there with being healthy. Now, we talk about genes briefly. We all have DNA, and the DNA is basically the code of instructions for how the factory works, our bodies, and it maintains your body. But whether those genes turn off or on, the gene expression, what we call the epigenome, is very much independent on lifestyle choices. Smoking, alcohol, these are things we know promote cancer and other things. Are you sedentary? Are you just not moving? Chronic stress. Do you lack community? It's something we talk about at church every week. How are we doing community-wise and connecting to people? You'd be surprised how all these things determine whether genes turn off or on. So let's break it down. What is the role of entropy? Complete deregulation of all symptoms if you did nothing. What would your body do? Begin with the cardiovascular system. We have capillaries that provide these little networks of blood all through your body. I like to think of it as rivers and tributes. So when you look at a river and you look at streams that break off the river, what do you see along the river path? Plants, trees, and those trees and plants are all relatively healthy. Why? Because water brings life. What would happen in a drought where the streams start to dry up to all the trees and everything along the riverbed? Death. And that's what capillaries are. As you age and you do nothing, all these microcapillaries dry out, and then all the circulation with all the oxygen and nutrients and the proteins they bring to the tissue is depleted. That results in tissue death. And that affects your ability to build muscle. It affects your ability to transport oxygen and move. Everything by one system breaking down affects all the other systems. The musculoskeletal system, it's quoted that muscle sarcopenia, which is atrophy of your muscles, your mass decreases up to 10% a decade, 1% a year if you don't intervene. And it can be even more than that. And your muscles affect your bone. As you move and you load muscle, it bends your bones. And as you bend your bones, they grow. If you're not doing these things, that leads to osteoporosis, osteopenia, and then it also affects other systems of your body. Now, what are some of the other things that affect your bone? We know this, lifestyle choices. Smoking, drinking, decreased estrogen, testosterone, decreased activity, corticosteroids. All these things can decrease bone density. Nervous system. Think of the nervous system as a highway. Okay, so you have this traffic going, and it's supposed to be going 70 miles per hour, and the whole system starts to collapse, and the speed limit turns to 30 miles per hour. Your nerve impulses, which are supposed to go to activate your muscles through the peripheral nervous system, brain, spinal cord, then it ventures off to the peripheral nervous system to activate your muscles, to feed your organs, and the whole system slows down. So your balance gets a little off. Your ability to move quickly becomes a little bit slower. Everything moves to a slower pace. The voltage drops. Think of a light. It begins to dim. And your readiness to move is diminished. Everything comes to a stop. Okay? And that affects muscle growth. It affects circulation. Again, the connection of all the systems to deregulation. The brain, the headquarters. We talk about this because as we age, we don't want to lose cognitive function. We don't want to lose memory. We don't want to, lose our ability to think. There's 100 billion nerve cells, neurons in the brain. And there's even more supporting cells we call glial that bring blood and oxygen to the brain. These supporting tissues are critical. And what do you think? The ability of the brain to remodel, to grow, neuroplasticity, or reorganize itself, to grow brain cells, it comes to a steady stop. Brain function, memory, cognitive, even your mood is affected without intervention. The respiratory system. This is the thing I find most fascinating and I think is the most significant because of all the systems, if you can't get oxygen in, the respiratory system, your lungs, your nose, your throat, if you're not using oxygen, you're dead. Oxygen is, the ability to utilize oxygen is number one in systems for life. It's important. The origins of life from an evolutionary standpoint started in the ocean with bacteria, then eventually to fish. As the atmosphere oxygen level rose up, we had amphibians, which are both sea and land creatures. As oxygen in the atmosphere rose, we went into the reptilian area with dinosaurs. As oxygen in the atmosphere rose, even further higher life forms, which led to eventually mammals, which is where we are now. The ability to utilize oxygen is critical. It is energy. It's a highly reactive molecule, and it's not to get into all the too much detail of it, but it transfers electrons back and forth. If you have a good ability to transfer electrons in your body, you are healthy. If you don't transfer electrons well, you are in poor health, and you're prone to all types of disease. You need a good respiratory system to have energy, to grow, to create all the positive things in the body. And in each cell, you have the powerhouses of the cell, the mitochondria. That's where food, energy, and nutrients are burned and converted to smaller nutrients and eventually into what we call ATP. That's where energy is manufactured. You have trillions of these cells because we have a trillion cells in our body. So in the mitochondria, each cell in the muscle contains 1,000 to 2,500 mitochondria. So just do the math. It's trillions and trillions of these powerhouses. And without doing anything to intervene, they decline in number and they just disappear. And the endocrine system, we know we have hormones, network of glands that release hormones that are involved with muscle growth, metabolism, reproduction, testosterone, cortisol, the stress hormone we've been talking about a little bit here in church a little bit. All of these are affected. And if we do nothing, again, this whole hormone system is deregulated. And as we age, it declines. It affects muscle growth, tissue repair, immune system's compromised. A few more. Protein agglomeration is one we don't talk too much about. As we get older, we have to take all the protein that we use, and this is a big thing about too much protein in diets as well, but protein become damaged, especially depends on the source you get it. You have the part of your cell called the lysosome. It's like an incinerator. And what it's supposed to do is take all that excessive protein and like an incinerator in a trash in a factory and burn it up. As you get older, the lysosomes become a little bit dysfunctional and they're unable to keep up with the backflow of protein. And where do you think all that damaged protein goes that doesn't go into the incinerator? Into the cell. Then the cell becomes deregulated in its function. If cells aren't working well, you're aging fast. And last couple, the DNA, the molecule that carries the genetic map, the instructions for gene expression, for all biological processes. Basically, your expression of life, your energy, digestion, immune function, the ability to grow and repair tissue. Over the course of your life, it suffers accumulated damage through just billions and billions and trillions of chemical reactions. Like, the example is, what is rust? It's the interaction between water, oxygen, and metal. And your DNA suffers damage, environmental toxins. So the genetic map to how your body is supposed to run is completely compromised. So think of it as a computer that gets old. The software slows down. It doesn't open up as quick. You get viruses. The whole system starts to go kaput, as we've all had old computers. Now, you can actually measure this, and you've heard of this, and some of you have gone to longevity clinics, and they can do some of it here, telomere shortening. Telomere shortening are the caps at the end of your chromosomes, and you can measure them. And if they're getting shorter, your DNA is damaged. It's a measure of how well your DNA is working. And last one is NAD. This is the molecule that repairs DNA and gives you energy. And as you approach the age of 50, it declines 50%. So the molecule you need to repair your DNA is half the battle. Now, the good news is you can get the NAD into your body through IVs, intramuscular injections, suppository. At the Fix, they do IVs for NAD, and it's remarkable. I've had it done. It's about a 2-3 hour process. If you do it too quick, you get really lightheaded. But about 3 or 4 boosts of NAD and it can have a dramatic impact in your energy and regulation of the body. Okay, so that's it. Quick summary. What is aging? Decay of all systems, poor energy systems, DNA deregulation, decreased blood flow, etc., decreased oxygen, decreased mitochondria count, protein agglomerate. The factory is breaking down. Okay, so now next time someone asks you what aging is, you can say, the factory is breaking down. Okay. Aging, needless to say, is frustrating, it's dreadful, it's morbid. That's it. Thank you, good night. You're all going to die. Okay. There is good news, okay? Intervention. And now, it's beyond this lecture to go too deep into each one of these things. And Derek and I have talked about future lectures. And this is things where we can lead into, I'm giving you a summary of what we can talk about more in the future and break exercise down, break nutrition down, sleep, stress management down. Relationships are a big part of intervention as well. And spiritual, living for purpose, meaning living for things bigger than yourself, legacy. These things are important as we talk about aging. I'm going to spend a few minutes at the end talking about these things. Exercise creates growth signals. It creates energy. It fuels your metabolism. You burn fat. You build muscle. You reduce your risk factor of Western society diseases. Your quality of life, your movement ability, your mobility skills improve. Cognitive, it affects your brain, emotional. Exercise is critical. And I'm going to just for you to, discussion on exercise. Navigating your body through space is complicated. As you move left, right, your brain, if you're doing a brain scan, you see it, all these different parts of your brain light up, particularly your frontal cortex, as you open up all these softwares to move. So you're stimulating brain cells by simply moving and challenging yourself. Cell-to-cell communication skyrockets, nerves firing, blood flow, brain activation, hormones. Your blood becomes more acidic as you exercise. When your blood is acidic, it affects your hormones. Your hormones start to, as acidic blood is correlated with a big rise in human growth hormone. What does human growth hormone help you with? Protein synthesis, building muscle. It helps you repair tissue. It helps with blood flow through everything. Human growth hormone is critical as we age, and exercise boosts it dramatically. It helps your immune system. It boosts your white blood cell count. Hormones are regulated. The mitochondria count in your body drives up dramatically so you can again begin to burn fuel efficiently and have more energy. Muscle hypertrophy occurs. Your nervous system, remember that highway I talked about? The speed limit goes back up to where it's supposed to be, so you're getting quicker activation of your muscles. Things are starting to come alive. Vascular, the capillaries start to open up. With that comes nutrients and oxygen. You reflow life in your body and energy functions. Make sense? I refer to this simply, this would be the book I write, as all systems go. If you are doing things correctly, all your systems are working well and your risk of disease is low and your function and your ability to move and quality of life is high. Now, in the old days, we used to break it down to, are you doing endurance exercise or strength exercise? And you can still use that if it helps you. Endurance exercise, are you going for your long bike ride? Are you in the gym doing your strength exercise? But that's so outdated in the sense of it, and if that works for you, do that. But there's so much more insightful ways to look at it. Rather, look at it from an intensity perspective. Are you really working hard and driving your heart rate up and pushing, which activates fast twitch muscle fibers? Fast twitch muscle fibers are your bigger fibers compared to your slow twitch muscle fibers. And they're the ones that give you definition and hypertrophy and growth. They drive force through the body and they affect growth hormone and help your blood become acidic. That requires some type of force output, either speed or load, and pushing the body to failure a little bit, versus slow twitch muscle fibers, which are postural or going long distance. You need them both, but I think we tend, as we get older, I think I just saw someone mention on the news, when was the last time you saw an older person sprint or jump? You don't typically see that, and there's no reason you couldn't. You have to train to do these things, but it's important to keep your fast twitch fibers going because more muscle correlates with better health. You have to start recruiting fast twitch muscle fibers for health. And then the other way to look at exercise is it just linear? Are you repetitively, on the bike, building up your heart or running? Or are you moving multi-directional, playing sports that force you to move left or right, or being trained in that manner? Brain neurogenesis, the ability to build brain cells, is based on both intensity, driving the heart rate up and challenging yourself, and multi-directional movement, complex movement patterns. If you want to improve your brain health, you have to challenge yourself in your exercise. It can't be as simple as going for a walk, which is still good, and it's a good starting point for slow twitch fiber and getting circulation, but it requires so much more than that to really optimize health. That photo on the right is former Mr. Olympian Coleman, and this one over here is my brother, who's here tonight. You could talk to him. He hates privacy too. Yeah. But this is excessive. This is not the goal of exercise, to build muscle. A lot of, which, again, you can build massive muscle, which has benefits, but it comes at a cost in terms of the loads on your joints and breaking your body down. Rather, I like this photo. The aesthetic, the grace, the muscle, lean muscle mass, the ability to flow through space and navigate and leap and jump and change direction, the beauty of a ballerina or a track and field athlete. So watching the Olympics and watching the women and watching how graceful they flow on that track, particularly the sprinters, I think it's an art of beauty. That is the objective of exercise. We're trying to build symmetrical, proportionate bodies, building athletes, the ability to project force through the body while mitigating loads on your joints. That one in the, Gabrielle, by the way, that's the Chivas, Guadalajara Chivas, that I end up doing a lot of work with in Mexico. But it's about alignment, how well, it's posture, it's stability, it's moving gracefully through space, which can be trained. This has been a big part of a lot of the work, and I believe that all types of movement come out of this triangle. Posture, your alignment. Stability, your ability to control your joint position. Mobility. You have to be flexible and stable to get into positions. If you don't have mobility in your hips, you can't squat down to the floor, right? So you end up rounding your back, your knee caves in. Sadly, we see kids trained this way a lot. We see strength coaches who aren't properly trained loading kids with heavy weights on their back. Their knees are buckling their backs. Now, they can do it because they're young, but they're setting them up for a lot of orthopedic injuries down the road. You need mobility, flexibility in all the joints of your body. You need stability, core stability to hold your spine in proper posture, your hips. You need good posture. These could be trained, and out of this comes explosive strength. Out of this comes power. Out of this comes speed and endurance. And I put genres under there because some genres do really well with this. Like yoga is great for working on posture and alignment, right? Pilates is great for building stability of the core. And then you can combine that with some endurance, some strength training. So we have genres that can really help with these things. And then the last thing is the fascia. The fascia is the collagen bodysuit. It's the organ of form. And it's the biggest organ in the body. And that's what it looks like. You can see that's a muscle fiber connected to the skin above it. It looks like cotton candy. Yeah, and it should weave and be smooth like a sponge filled with water. But again, what happens to a sponge, if you just throw it on the counter and let it dry up, it becomes rigid. You have to move, you have to hydrate, you have to eat well to keep the fluid movement. It becomes the organ of form, which is why this is concerning. If you achieve, whether you're a child or an older person, and you achieve certain positions and you're just locked in those positions, that's what fascia looks like on the right. See all the adhesions that form? That's what you're basically locking yourself into, is adhesions that are tough to break. The quality and health of the fibers becomes compromised. The other thing with aging is you reduce your risk of injuries because you move faster and left to right and you're reacting. If you trip or stumble or whatever, you catch yourself. So these traumatic injuries are much less. Okay. Because you never know when you have to be able to react fast. Okay? So quickness, but in all seriousness, I can't tell you how many people I say who they've tripped on the curb and they end up hurting themselves because they can't move fast enough to catch their center of gravity. Speed, reaction is trainable at any age. Trey Fabrocini, my nephew, is here today. Trey just retired. I want to I'm going to bring him up here a minute and have him demonstrate something. He didn't know that. Trey played 4 years at Denison, and he shattered just about every record that exists for the running back position, and he just retired. So congratulations to Trey. Yeah. Now, what I want to talk about is scalability of exercise, because scalability is important, because if you watch someone like a high-profile athlete like Trey move, you're going to be like, I can't do that. But you can start somewhere. Trey, do you mind coming up a minute? So, Steve, you never thought this stage would be used as a gym, did you? But here we go. So, put this around your waist, Trey. Demonstrate just a drive force hitting the ground, moving left to right, and I'll give you some resistance with it. And start off slow. Just drive the knees up like a sprinter. Okay. Now, what you notice is he's hitting the ground. Now start to drive more force. As he hits the ground with force and power, he creates more muscular relaxation. Start moving left to right and really start to show them what it's like to drive force through the ground. Now move back to me. Good. Drive harder force. Go hit it. Good. Okay. Now just go to a plyo, kind of maybe a hop left, right. Just put some explosion into it for me, please. Okay, break. Good. Thanks, Trey. Okay. You get the point? Okay, so you look at him and you're like, and he's, believe me, holding back. If he were driving with full force, I'd be tipped over that side. But you're like, I can't do that. But can you do this? For a lot of aging people, this is where we start. Can you do this? Medial lateral motions. Can you do this? This is where you start. And then eventually it's, can you hop and hold? Every place has a starting point. The problem is it's not to start it. And when you age, you have to start these things. You have to start challenging your bodies in multiple directions of movement with force. And then that's what bumps up all those muscle firing patterns, nervous system patterns, capillary dilation, all the things that are so important that combat the tide of aging. Okay, nutrition. I'm going to talk briefly about nutrition. And every time you just start talking about nutrition, everything goes on a tangent. It totally takes over the lecture. So I don't want that to happen tonight. So I'm giving you a forewarning. Let's talk about it briefly, and then we can have a separate lecture, and we can even bring nutrition experts up and really break it down. I still find it funny. I know there's some other trainers in the room. Whenever we talk about nutrition, it feels like an elementary class, like you're in kindergarten. Like it's so like, are you eating too many carbs? That's why you're fat. Are you eating too many fats? That's why you're fat. But no one says, okay, well, common sense says not all fats, carbs, and proteins are created equal. There's good fats and there's bad fats, right? We know this. If you're eating French fries at McDonald's and potato chips all day, you're eating trans fats, which are bad. But if you're eating flaxseed, olive oil, almonds, you're eating fats that are super healthy, loaded with macronutrients. But we never say that. We just say, well, don't eat the fat. You have to quantify the type of fat. We do this with carbs too. Are you eating candy and soda all day long, or are you eating vegetables and fruits? There's a big difference. And protein gets a little bit more complicated because of the meat, plant-based stuff. But there's good proteins. There's good plant-based proteins. And I'm not going to get into whether you should be a vegetarian or a meat eater tonight. But needless to say, there's good quality meat that is grass-fed, that is well cared for, versus factory farm food, plants like you get at McDonald's, where they're giving corn on the factory farms, and that's disgusting conditions, and they have to thrust antibiotics into them to keep the cows alive because their guts aren't designed to take corn in. And we're taking that in, and all the dead cells in the cow and all the corrupt. So there's good protein. The point is there's good protein and bad protein. So you have to quantify, put it into perspective before we get into that. So let's just do red light, yellow light, green light. You guys tell me where we are. Traffic color. Don't say green. Okay. Okay. Fast food, there's cake, pizza loaded with pepperoni and cheese. Now, I love pepperoni and cheese. Don't get me wrong. This isn't a taste traffic light test. If this were a taste, this would be green. And I'm not saying you can never have this stuff. You just have to put in perspective that when you are having it, it's not good for your body. It creates a huge sugar spike. Now, I will say this, the one thing to remember too, fruit juice is not healthy. In perspective, don't confuse fruit juice with fruit. Fruit juice is loaded, loaded with sugars. I even read one thing about orange juice. You got to be careful with orange juice. Orange juice is not the same thing as fresh squeezed oranges. There's a big difference. Color, traffic light. Right, doesn't take a genius to know this, right? Your nuts, your seeds, your vegetables, your fruits, loaded with macronutrients, minerals, vitamins. We know these things are healthy. And this is where you get a little bit on the border. Is it a yellow light, or is it a yellow slash on the red side or yellow slash on the green? And there's ways you can play with it to lean it towards yellow-green versus yellow-red. This is the dairy, right? So we all love our eggs, but eggs are saturated fat, and an egg once in a while isn't awful, but eggs every day might not be the best thing. Cheeses, we all love our cheese, but cheeses every day in high proportions are saturated fats, which have some good qualities in them. So that's why it's yellow. Whole milk, debatable. I personally don't drink milk anymore. I drink almond milk. But whole milk is loaded with growth factors. So I have to apologize to a lot of kids who, when they were playing football when they were young, they couldn't put weight on, and their parents like, could you work with them? Could you get them stronger and build weight? That was easy. I just say, drink 2 glasses of whole milk a day. Bam, 10, 20 pounds instantly within a month. Crazy. Milk is designed for a calf. And why does a calf drink milk? To grow. It's loaded with growth factors. The problem is everything grows. So you grow muscle, but you grow other things that you may not want to grow, and it can be highly inflammatory. I'm not saying don't drink milk. I'm just saying take it in with some stride. Milk has some good things, vitamins and stuff, but it is designed for growth. Meat, as I said, there's a big difference between grass-fed meat, healthy protein, and the garbage you get at factory farms or McDonald's type food. Salmon, loaded with good fatty acids, but big difference between wild salmon and farm-raised salmon, which is not good for you. What I try to do with this yellow area, the yellow light, is I like eggs. So, but instead of having eggs, bacon, hash browns, have eggs with vegetables, spinach, avocado, mushrooms. Basically, it's a veggie omelet, and I do a lot of that. So I have my egg, but you change the density of your plate to things that are green light. So you still get all these macronutrients, you control inflammation. It's just what do you put on the plate with these things? And that's the degree I'm going to talk about it. Because again, nutrition will always take us off on the most severe tangents. I've seen this at every conference where it's like, I can't believe I opened that door. So a little joke to go with it. With inflation, which sounds like inflammation, but with inflation these days, that is the gift rather than a wedding ring. And this is kind of a little joke on our profession. The sad thing is it's true. That is, I think just a few weeks ago, someone in the audience died at I forget if it was a CrossFit conference or some type of weightlifting conference, and the weight must have slipped off the bar and tumbled into the audience, sadly hit someone in the audience, and traumatically that person didn't survive. You can, every trainer has probably had an episode in the course of their career where the bar has slipped and something has happened, but needless to say, if you're using weights, you got to be careful, especially overhead. Okay, true or false? Let's just go through this. I'm going to get fat if I eat too much and don't exercise. You're going to get fatter probably, right? Yeah, especially if you're eating crap. Pretty straightforward. How about this? My muscle is going to turn to fat if I sit around all the time. That is false. The reason it's false is fat is a tissue, as is muscle. Muscle cannot convert to fat, and fat cannot convert to muscle. They are separate types of tissue, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. Muscle is its own type of tissue. Fat is its own type of tissue. You can develop fat in your muscle cells intertwined with your muscle fibers, but your muscle cells do not turn to fat. They can atrophy, but muscle cells and fat cells a fat cell is called an adipocyte, and a muscle cell is called a muscle fiber or myofiber. Eating too much makes you fat. Well, context. If you're a high-end athlete like Trey, you better be eating a ton to keep up with your muscle growth demand. But he's exercising a lot and training. So his metabolism is skyrocket. So your base resting metabolism at rest is much higher because all the muscle density. And his workouts are drive, so he needs a ton of calories. So you have to put it in context. Back to, again, when you talk nutrition, it's like being in kindergarten. No one puts things in context. Eating too many calories makes you fat. Yes, if you're not using those calories and the quality of the calories are poor. So this is the thing with muscle. Muscle is what, again, Chris Crowley would call the grand negotiator. Lean muscle mass increases metabolism. It gulps up sugar and enhances fat burn, reduces inflammation. This is what muscle looks like. It looks like steak, doesn't it? That's muscle broken down, dissection. So you see the outer ring is the skin. Then you go into the intramuscular septum. Then that's the bone in the middle. It looks like a steak. Okay. Excessive body fat, those yellow little globules are fat cells. They are pro-inflammatory, excessive, I said. Not just some body fat, excessive body fat. They are toxic. They enhance the risk of Western society diseases. But the significance of the toxicity is based on where those fat cells are. It's like real estate. Location, location, location. Fat storage location. So the first place you store fat is subcutaneously. That's your gut, your butt, your back, your thighs. Now, no one likes to have a big gut or butt, but the reality is subcutaneous fat is not a bad thing. You have subcutaneous fat as a storage site. It's supposed to go there. Now, granted, we don't want to have big butts and big guts. We prefer to have minimal fat storage there, but if you're going to store fat, that is the healthy place to store fat. When that overflows, where does that fat go? Around your organs. That's called visceral fat. That is what creates problem. That is toxic. That is pro-inflammatory. That is what leads to Western society diseases. And the other place it goes is in your muscles. It becomes intertwined with your muscle fibers. See those steaks? See all that white marbling and gristling in between? That is fat. Remember if we just go back? There's muscle. That looks pretty lean, right? See the red? Now look at all this fat, that white marble. That's fat intertwined with the muscle fiber. Now you can actually look at this on a DEXA scan, and you can get DEXA scans at all these longevity centers, or there's places in Denver that offer them, and you can actually see where your muscle density is in your body. You can see where your fat is deposited, and then you get a good profile of, are you healthy or not? If you have a lot of fat around your organs, you've got problems. If you have a lot of fat in your muscle, all that extra fat is deregulating your body system. That is not a good thing. So here's how it works, the digestion process. Let's say you go out and you have a meal. You're doing McDonald's to supersize it, and you're getting all these trans fats and sugars and supersized Cokes. So that goes into your digestive system. It's broken down, it gets into your blood, and then all this sugar and fat, particularly sugar, tells your pancreas, your brain says, better bump up the insulin levels because we got to get all this sugar out of the bloodstream. So then it's going to send all that sugar somewhere. Where's the first place it's going to send it? Muscle. Muscle stores sugar in the form of glycogen to be used as energy later on. And liver. Your liver can store a great deal of sugar, but they can only store so much. So then you still have all this high blood sugar because you're eating McDonald's and supersizing it and you're not exercising. Where's the next place all that sugar is going to go? Well, the liver is going to do what it can, but at some point the liver is in overload mode. So through a process called lipogenesis, it converts all this sugar into fatty acids, free fatty acids called triglycerides. Then that has to go someplace because, it's got to load somewhere. And that's where it loads to subcutaneous fat, so your butt gets bigger, your gut. But those sites at some point over time, it's like, we don't have any more room. So where's it go? Organ fat, muscle. Now here's the challenge when it gets into your muscle and intertwined with your muscle fibers. Your muscles become deregulated. And the muscles are the key gateway for when sugar rises, your muscles say, hey, we want the sugar. The gates close. When the gates close, the sugar in your blood goes up higher because the muscles aren't taking it in anymore. Because all this fat that's intertwined with the muscle fibers is deregulating the muscle cell. So the muscle is no longer effective in taking in sugar. So what does your body do when your blood sugar rises up? Pumps more insulin out. Now the insulin's saying, get into the muscle cell, but your muscle's saying, we're not taking it. Then what happens? Blood sugar goes up again. That is the start of adult onset diabetes. That is the start of what we call insulin resistance. Has anyone heard that term? That is what it means to be insulin resistance. It's a process that occurs over time because you're not moving, you're not eating well, and your muscles aren't taking in the sugar anymore because everything is deregulated because you've loaded too many bad things into your muscles, the fat that's building through this process I just explained. I think if it's summarized in that way, sometimes we make nutrition and physiology so difficult to understand that we don't take anything out of it. Your muscle gate is closing. Now, if you exercise, especially after meals, the muscle gates start to open. That's what you're trying to do, is get all this sugar into your muscle so it can be burned. So here's some tips. We know this stuff. After dinner, what are you supposed to do at some point? Go for a walk. Or if you can't go for a walk, dance. Do a burst of activity. People think I'm crazy because I'm on my driveway at night at 9 o'clock at night, and I just like to skip up the hill. I skip up the hill, I jump up the hill, because I don't have time to go for a long walk, but sometimes I do a quick sprint up the hill. But just a minute to drive the heart rate up stimulates all these processes in your body so that the sugars in your bloodstream says, hey, I'm not going to be stored in the subcutaneous fat, let alone visceral fat. I'm going to get burned up pretty quick by the muscle. Muscle gates are open, take the sugar in, lean bodies. That make sense? Now, if you like to go for a long walk, go for it. but do something. I'm not saying right at the dinner table at cash, you start jumping jacks. You get the point, right? But when you're done with dinner, walk around town. Go to Paradise, have your cookie, and then burn that cookie, right? And start moving, right? Yeah, that's why we see people at Paradise, Susie's here tonight. They sit down, they listen to the music, but they have to get their butt off the chair at some point and walk around the town and enjoy themselves. So it's such a simple thing to do. And it could be just a burst of 20 seconds if you don't have time to go for that long walk. Stimulate muscle, fuel metabolism. Understood? Yeah, pretty. Sleep. Again, we can, as I said, this lecture is designed to be an intro to other lectures. And sleep is so important. That's where all the restoration occurs, where healthy wellness, tissue repair, immune system supplement, memory, growth hormones released. What does growth hormone help you with? Protein synthesis, building muscle. If you're not sleeping, you're compromising your ability to build muscle. And not to get too much, but we know the basics of sleep. Get into a routine, try to stay at the same time, not too late. Try to avoid the late night dinner, get off the phone and computer. We've all heard this stuff. This is the area, I highly recommend everyone read this book, Breath, by James Nestor. I had the pleasure of meeting him not too long ago here in Aspen. Had a great conversation. He's a researcher, but he's got everything on the power of oxygen in his book and the power of nasal breathing. It is remarkable with learning to breathe properly. Most of us, as we get through stress in our day, are holding our breath. We don't realize it. And that creates an inflammatory response. We're holding our breath sitting at a computer or dealing with a stressful response. Chronic stress increases blood sugar, inflammation, and that hormone we call cortisol, which is the stress hormone that tells your liver to release sugar into your blood. You don't want that. So breath work, whether you want to do it in the form of meditation and just breathing, I do it in prayer. I'm breathing as I pray. But sometimes just breathing and relaxing. Meditating can just be turning your brain off and focus on something good that makes you happy. Meditation is just a form of where you put your concentration. Focus on your friends. Focus on good things in life as you breathe. And try to breathe through your nose. There's a big difference between, read the book, it's fascinating. But stress is going to go up if we don't breathe, which affects our hormones, affects inflammation. Breathe. And we've been doing that a little bit more here, Steve. It's a good crowd. I love the fact that sometimes in church we just stop and Steve says, breathe, and then we pray. But it's a beautiful thing. I use cold plunges and sauna a lot. I've really become, I love cold plunges. Cold plunges, the sauna takes too long. I can do a cold plunge in 3 minutes. If you have the time, 20 minutes, the sauna is great. They have infrared, and we have the other ones. But fat burning, you get a fat burning boost. Growth hormone is released. Neuroplasticity of the brain, immune system boost. White blood cell count goes out. Decreased stress. You flush toxins, particularly in the sauna. You decrease swelling, particularly in the hot and the cold plunge. You enhance muscle growth. You reduce the risk of Alzheimer, dementia. And you can combine it with what? Breath work. Believe me, when you get in a cold plunge the first time, you're holding your breath, actually. You have to concentrate on breath work to adapt to the cold. And now it's taken me a while, but through deep breathing, I can control my body temperature in the cold plunge as I adapt. The benefits of cold are remarkable, and a lot of it is from the work of Wim Hof, the crazy Norwegian guy who hikes up Everest in his shorts. But he's learned to regulate his body temperature where he can do these things. So you're stimulating all this blood vasodilation in an environment that's trying to make you go fight or flight, You learn to control your hormones, your micro vessels, your cardiovascular. It's amazing what you can do with breath work. Now, most books, this is just a point I want to make. If they had to prioritize the most important things for health, exercise is first, then sleep or nutrition second, stress management, all these things at the bottom. And I think you have to put it in perspective. It's more of a triangle because they're all interrelated. Let's say you're eating your exercise and you have a good workout in a gym, and then you go and you eat McDonald's food. Well, instead of replenishing all the food you need to grow muscle, you're creating an inflammatory response. And then that's affecting your sleep, so you're not getting restorative sleep. And if you're tired and you wake up exhausted and you try to go to the gym and work out, you're adding further inflammation to your body. they work together. You have to find a way to balance nutrition with sleep with exercise and listen to your body. Otherwise, you're just fighting yourself. And there's times where you shouldn't exercise. We know this. If you're in a high inflammatory and you're eating like crap, exercise might not be the thing to do at the time. You've got to get things in control. Back to respiration, breath, oxygen, maybe a gentle walk as opposed to going to the gym and hammer weights. We're almost done here. Okay, faster than I thought. Okay, so if you want a resource, this is the book that I was involved with the series, Younger Next Year, the exercise program. And there's videos on there on this site, youngernextyear.com. And there's videos where you can learn how to do the stabilization, ground up routine, preparation for movement. Then there's some exercises you can learn on another DVD. So it gives you some basic starting points if you're interested. Okay, and this is the last 5 minutes. This is the part that's really touched my heart the most, is thinking about, it's one thing to age, health. Some of us who are trainers here, we live and sleep this stuff, so it's normal for us. But really, as you age, do you want to age and be alone? Do you want to age and not connect? It's aging with grace and wisdom so you can use your health to make a difference in the world. And that comes with wisdom. As you age, you have experiences. You've made a ton of mistakes. We know this stuff, right? The beautiful quote, before a man can do things, there must be things he will not do. And Derek last week in the lecture on finances talked about how was the phrase? You can do anything you want, but you can't do everything you want. Which is another way, I believe, of saying we all have gifts. And with age, we can define and refine these gifts. We learn what we're good at and making a difference in the lives of people. It takes practice, and so you have to practice your gifts. Practice, 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 like anything in life. And that comes with the wisdom of age. You realize this. You also realize time is running out, whether you're healthy or not. How do you want to spend the remaining years on this planet? And if it's just about, we go so overboard on health, I think, Health's important, and having an understanding of health, if hopefully you do now, is great. But the health, it's $1 trillion industry because everyone's so concerned about health, you miss the point of why we want to be healthy, which is to impact the lives of other people. This is a great video. Now, don't take it out of context that it's about vegan power, but that's not why I'm showing this. It has nothing to do with what I want you to take out of this. Is one of the strongest men on the planet, Patrick I can't even pronounce it, Bobibian. He's from Iran. He's broke all these world records on strength, but it's not the vegan part that I care about. As I said, it's a different discussion. It's his profound words of wisdom at the end of this video.
Someone asked me, how could you get as strong as an ox without eating any meat? And my answer was, have you ever seen an ox eating meat? Loud bandits!
Patrick is one of the strongest men on the planet, with multiple world records, including the front hold, the keg lift, and the log lift.
I started lifting weights when I was 14 years old because I was kind of wimpy and small in that time. And I wanted to be some kind of hero, able to help if something happened. This is my mom and dad. When I was 4 years old, my dad, my mom, and my little sister, she was 6 months old, they were in a car accident. And only my mom survived the accident. So when I was young, I had these fantasies of being super strong, and if someone got trapped, being able to help them get out.
For any guy watching that day, it wasn't just a car Patrick had crushed. It was a myth they'd been fed their entire lives. This will be the heaviest weight that anyone has ever carried on their shoulders. Patrick will be attempting 555 kilos. This is an official Guinness World Record. Here we go! World record in time!
It's not about being the strongest and the biggest. It's really about what are you going to do with your strength and what are you going to do with the power that you have.
Amen. He's talking about physical strength, obviously, to some degree. And we all, if we take care of our bodies, can use our physical strength to do the little things. Carry groceries up the stairs for your neighbor, shovel their driveway if they're ill. We can use physical strength to make a difference in people's lives. But beyond that, we have many more gifts, God-given gifts to make a difference in the world. Listening to a friend, helping people out during tough times, fan those flames of gifts to life. And with that, I'll leave you with one last quote and then one last video. In general, this is a beautiful quote of terms. Service is a willing, working, and doing in which a person acts not according to his own purposes or plans, but with a view to the purpose of another person and according to the need, disposition, and directions of others. It is an act whose freedom is limited and determined by the other's freedom, an act whose glory becomes increasingly greater to the extent that the doer is not concerned about his own glory, but about the glory of the other. It's beautiful. And there's more to it if you want to hear more about Karl Barth, but it's a beautiful, Karl Barth's poetry. And with that, I will give you just a minute or two more of thinking about your destiny.
What's the matter, Mom?
I'm dying, Forrest. Come on in, sit down over here.
Why are you dying, Mama?
It's my time. It's just my time. Oh, now. Don't you be afraid, sweetheart. Death is just a part of life. Something we're all destined to do. I didn't know it, but I was destined to be your mama. I did the best I could.
You did good, Mom.
Well, I happen to believe you make your own destiny. You have to do the best with what God gave you.
What's my destiny, Mom?
You're gonna have to figure that out for yourself. Life is a box of chocolates, Forrest. You never know what you're gonna get.
Mama always had a way of explaining things so I could understand them.
I will miss you, Forrest.
She had got the cancer and died on a Tuesday. I bought her a new hat with little flowers on it. And that's all I have to say about that.
I think we've all seen that, right? But so profound wisdom in a scene of a movie about using our gifts, and our destiny is intertwined with our faith and to some degree our willingness to surrender to something bigger in our life. And with that, I give you the words of probably the wisest person who's ever lived, Mr. Ferris Bueller. Life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, it will miss you. And that's all I have to say about that. Thank you, guys. Okay. For those who have dinner plans or have to leave, feel free. You won't, and those who want to ask questions, I'll stick around for a few minutes. But if you have dinner plans and you have to get going, please don't feel bad about walking out at this point, and I'll take some questions. Yes?
This might sound strange, but I'm thinking of one of these great African marathoners, let's say a male who's running down close to 2 hours in a marathon. When he's done with the marathon, he breathes. He's not out of breath or anything. What's going on in his body?
Well, well, first of all, we're talking about the top marathon runners in the world. So you're looking at about 0.00000001% of the population with a VO2 max who has ability to utilize oxygen through an energy system aerobically and anaerobically beyond what the normal human being can. So they're running at paces that are crazy. But their recovery, too, is crazy. They can push their bodies to that limit because they're back to energy. Their ability to utilize oxygen is so proficient, they recover on a dime. Their energy processes, the way they burn, cellular respiration, they extract the oxygen. They have billions of vessels going from their lungs to their bloodstream. So they're recovering on an instant, even during those fatigue states, because of their physiological adaptations, both genetically and from training. Please, Dee. Correct. When you exercise, your body becomes slightly acidic, particularly with more intense exercise. Intensive exercise can increase the blood level, as opposed to alkaline, it becomes a little acidic. And if you take it to the extreme where you go to failure, you feel the burn. That's lactic acid. That is a byproduct of going through the whole cycle of burning the food groups and the ATP and all the glycogen being burned down, but it becomes acidic. But the acidic nature creates a growth hormone boost, which creates a protein synthesis response. So you'll occasionally see me in the gym, because I'm older now and I can't load my joints the way I did when I was younger. So these straps I put on called BFR straps, blood flow resistive straps. They're like, I don't want to say tourniquets, but they block the blood flow and it creates a backflow of blood. Well, blood is loaded with growth factors, and if you put straps on your thighs as you're exercising, you start to burn faster because the blood's not getting back to the heart as quickly. And that creates a super acidic environment for growth. And I can do my exercises with lighter loads, but still create a huge growth response. So as I get older, you have to modify with hip replacements or whatever. The way you develop fast twitch muscle fibers, you have to modify and be creative as you get older. I can't squat like Trey, 500 pounds on my back anymore. I can do maybe, sometimes I do 70 pounds and I just do more reps, but I block the blood flow so I can create growth in different manners, as can you. And we try to be creative with our clients this way of how we create growth without damaging and loading joints. Yeah. Other questions? Please, Renee. Yes.
How about a trampoline?
Well, first, let's address the running question. Everyone, it depends what your shock, it's a suspension system. How good is your suspension system to load and absorb force? Some people like Susie, even with her decades of life, still have a very good suspension system. She has the mobility in her ankles. She dissipates load well. She's strong enough in her hips to shock absorb, so she can get away with it. Other people can't, and they've got joints that are worn down. So the concept that you can't run because it loads your joints too bad is based on, it's just like a car. A Range Rover can go over bumps very effectively, but you wouldn't want to take a Pinto on the backside of Aspen Mountain. Do you have the proper suspension system to load? But if you don't, a good modification, yes, would be a mini trampoline. The problem with a mini trampoline, I shouldn't say a problem, the thing to consider is when you hit the ground, it creates ground reaction forces that create growth. You don't quite get those ground reaction forces on a mini tramp. They're good for balance. They're good for, challenging movement. But if you want ground reaction force, walking a little bit, training, and impact is good. But to the degree you have the suspension system to absorb force, which takes maybe a little consult from a professional. Please. Although, as I say, cryo plunges are great. Yeah, cryo. Do you mean the cryo, like yeah? They're effective, as I said. The Fix has those. Well, not at the moment. They had them, but they're a pain to maintain and when I was working with soccer players, they had the option of both, and I never once saw the soccer players go into the cryo unit. They just want the cold plunge. Cryo, if you can tolerate it better, great. But I do think there is something to be said about the cold plunge and immersing yourself in cold and learning to breathe through it. Yeah. Please. Skipping, go back to being a kid. Hopscotch, motor control patterns, sprinting. I always say training is nothing more than teaching people different genres of sports. Train like a sprinter, learn to create ground reaction force. Train like a ballet dancer or a martial artist. Gymnastics, ballet, yoga-like move. Take different genres, Aikido, learning to move and different, and you put it together with different types of loads and resistance and be creative. It's all about the movement pattern. But sprinting, track and field, even like I said, what I get demonstrated with Trey, you're not going to sprint up a hill like myself, or definitely not Trey, but can you learn to do this? Hit the ground, hit the ground, hit the ground, and to execute that motor pattern, hit the ground, hit the ground. Complexity of movement, you can learn that at any age. You just have to be trained to do it. Other questions? Jim? Yeah, most of the studies on the cold plunges are 11 minutes a week, or 2 to 3 minutes at a time. I personally do the cold plunge about 3-4 minutes. And but a lot of it is temperature related, right? There's a big difference between getting in a cold plunge at 38 degrees versus 150 to 60 degrees. The benefits start at 50 to 60 degrees. And it's just like everything. I see people go in the plunge and it's like, I can't do it. It's like, and I look at the temperature, it's 40 degrees. It's like, well, don't start in a cold plunge at 40 degrees. Start at 50 to 60 degrees and learn to adapt to that with your breath work. And then if you could adapt to it, you can go a little colder. I think the one at the Maroon Creek Club is set somewhere around 48 degrees. And that's my sweet spot that I like, where I can kind of balance breathing and staying in it for a while, is between 45 to 50, 45, 46. The sauna, if it's infrared temperature at 135, 20 minutes. If it's not an infrared, 170 degrees is the temperature. And with both of those, whether you're using cold plunge or sauna, 3 times a week is ideal. Would you do one before the other for specific reasons? That's a great question. I personally, when I do the cold plunge, you want your body, when I get out of the cold plunge, the first thing I do is I drop into this position. This is work of Wim Hof. And I try, because I'm frigid, right? Or I've adapted to it, but breathing. I try to get my internal temperature up passively by moving and breathing. And the power of oxygen stimulates blood flow, dilation, and you try to get your body temperature back up by yourself. That has incredible benefits, versus if I go in the sauna, it's passively heating. So once I feel like I have my body temperature in control, then if I want to go in the sauna or a hot tub, I do that. But typically, I try to get in the cold plunge and then manage my body temperature, and I can usually do it now within a minute. Within a minute, I'm pretty like, okay, I'm warm, I'm back to base temperature. It's taken practice, like anything, practice, practice, practice. But yes, I try not to go in the sauna after the cold plunge, or at least not for a period of time. Yeah. Susie? What about swimming? Swimming's fantastic exercise. Again, the benefits of swimming, of course, is lengthening. I try to swim 1 day a week because, again, it just lengthens the body out. And it's a different motion pattern than, as you know, is running or biking, and it's good for you posturally. I would say this, though. Don't get just stuck on a crawl. Do the backstroke, because the motion of a backstroke and lengthening this way, which is great for you golfers, because you need thoracic rotation. The backswim is one of the best you can do. But if you just do the crawl, you can generate some repetitively shoulder impingement issues. Like anything, you want to mix up the stroke patterns. But it's a great complement to other forms of aerobic training. I would just say if you're only going to swim, though, same thing. You're not getting the ground reaction forces of hiking and so forth. And there's even been studying with biking. Even professional cyclists, they just measured their bone density, and what do you think they found? These are the professionals, diminished bone density, because they don't do any ground action force, and they're not in the gym. They're also skinny upstream because they're trying to lose weight to maximize climbing ability. But bone density can drop on a bike, so it needs to be combined with other forms of training. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I love steam. Steam. I personally use steam. I think it works great for sinuses, right? It's going to drive your body temperature up as well. Maybe not as high as a sauna will, but and then I do breath work in the right nostril, out the left, and you can feel the steam flushing through. So you're clearing out toxins in your body. You're working breath work. You're getting heat deep into the sinus cavity, which is where you can develop, bacterial infections. So it has a purpose in it. You find that sweet spot that you like. Okay. One or two more questions, Pam? The food list? Where do I personally? I mean, we're in the supermarket in the perimeter. Is that what you're asking? You just go to the veggie section, on the perimeter of the supermarket. Generally the perimeter is where all the expensive, and that's an issue too. Food has become so expensive that it's sad, but if, we don't think of it here as much though. My food bill, when I used to do Roxy's on the way home, and I used to be able to go in and out of there for $25. I don't walk out of there for less than $75 now, each time I go, and that's up. But sadly, in our country, economically, the poor can't afford good food, so they buy the bad stuff, the processed food. It's really a big issue, which again keeps them further in health issues, and it just disrupts the whole, back to the economic, instability of the country. Health directly correlates with nutrition and exercise. So I think there is something to be at some point addressed in the economic element of all of this. But I just do the perimeter. I get my vegetables on the perimeter, and yeah. Yeah, that's why I say I'm not a big fan of getting too much into all these diets because it gets too confusing. I just look at my plate, and I say, okay, well, if keto diet, you want to avoid whatever the keto part of it is, but they try to do the fats and limit the carbs, but it's like if I got spinach on my plate, I don't care if it's carbs. It's not going to create a blood sugar spike, and it's loaded with macronutrients. It's loaded with protein, Popeye. It's loaded with so many good things. I don't care how much spinach I get, so I don't care if it's part of a keto diet or not. I don't look at it when I'm having walnuts and olive oil and seeds. I'm eating good stuff. I know what's healthy and good. Healthy and defined as what? Reduction in the risk of Western thyroid diseases, anti-inflammatory, positive growth factors, macronutrients. If it's loaded with those things, I'm eating it in high amounts. And I'm going to tend to try to eat those things before I eat the crap, which is why we had this wonderful buffet out here, right? And you had all these good fiber things, and then you had some potato chips on the side. So eat the good stuff first, and then have some potato chips. I told Derek, 2 grapes, 2 of the carrots, and then have your potato chip. You just have to find a way to balance the bad food with the good food. But we know, don't spend your time in McDonald's. I'll tell you a quick personal story. I grew up in McDonald's. My brother knows this. Yep. And because we played hockey, and the thing, we had the genetics to burn a lot of calories, Rob and I. So we would play hockey, and we wouldn't get out of practice till 7:38. So on the way home, my mom's not cooking. Where are we going? 90% of the time, McDonald's. And because the appetite is so big, it's not just, okay, a cheeseburger, French fry, and a Coke. No, it was 2 Quarter Pounders with cheese, 2 large order of fries, an apple pie, a large Coke, and a chocolate shake. That was it. So at age 13, I was supersizing it 4 or 5 nights a week. And when I wasn't eating there, I'm at Pizza Hut or Wendy's, and it's not that I never ate good. So fast forward to age 38, and I said, my buddy Dave Hollander, he's like, Bill, we got the new coronary CAT scan at the hospital. You want to try it? And then I'm like, gee, I wonder if all this the way I ate as a kid, because I ate like that for about a decade. I got a little better after college, a little bit more conscious, but not great. I was still eating cheeseburgers and pizzas, but I got better. But at 38, I said, I wonder if I created a bunch of fatty streaks. Remember what I said about glucose? So it's not showing up in me in terms of my body fat, because my metabolism is so high and I'm burning calories. So it's not showing up. I'm still pretty lean, but I'm like, I wonder if I created some fatty streaks and some problems in my arteries. So sure enough, did the coronary CAT scan. Bing, 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 lit up like a balloon. I had 80% blockage in my coronary descending artery. So at age 40, I could have been one of those guys biking up the pass who dies. They would have said, oh, he's so healthy, and I would have dropped dead on my bike. I was headed down that road. Caught it, obviously, switched to 90% vegetarian diet, and it's not 100%. I mix meat in once in a while, quality meat. But people ask what I eat, mostly plant-based, but I mix meat in, wild salmon, and I got on a statin as well. There is a place for medical science, but the purpose of a statin, in my opinion, is not just to drop your cholesterol. Statin has a lot of health benefits for your arteries. The issue, in my opinion, is not cholesterol, it's whether the cholesterol is oxidized. And if it's oxidized, that's what damages your arterial wall. Well, what's going to oxidize low-density lipoproteins? Inflammation. Well, if you're eating at McDonald's every day, you've got inflammation. You might not show it. So I was creating inflammation, oxidizing this low-density lipoproteins in my coronary artery walls, and that's what was causing plaque buildup and heart plaque. And there's good plaque and heart plaque. Now, here's what's interesting. Fast forward to Human Longevity Clinic. What do you think showed up? I did these advanced coronary CAT scans years later, 12, 15, 38 to about 58, 20 years later. Dramatic change. You can reduce your plaque buildup. I was like 60% gone from my diet change, exercise, eating smart. The plaque was dissolving, and the plaque that was there is stable hard plaque, as opposed to soft plaque, which can break loose and create inflammation that can cause the coagulation that can kill you. So you can change your profile, your metabolic profile, which indirectly changes your arterial pathways. It's dramatic what you can do with some smart exercise and just common sense in your eating habits. Eat the good foods, green lights, and then if you're going to eat some yellow lights, mix it with green food. Throw avocados in, smart stuff. It's just look at your plate. We know, please. Joint pain, arthritis, yeah. So joint pain, joint pain can come from a lot of reasons, first of all. You can get joint pain when you're 10 years old, growing pains, bones. Arthritis is the wear of the cartilage at the end of your bones. And that comes from a variety of factors. Metabolism and what you eat is part of it, because cartilage is cells. So if you eat bad foods, you don't have healthy cells. But it's also combined with the forces you put on your joints mechanically. So if you don't have a good suspension system to absorb load, and you're playing sports and you're not dissipating load well. There's three forces that break a joint down: compression, shear, and rotation. So if you can't, back to stabilization, posture, stability, mobility, if you can't dissipate load well because you don't move well, you move in bad alignment. That increases rotational force, compressive force, shear forces. You keep shearing on a joint long enough with compression, what happens to the surface? Breaks down, the cartilage breaks down, then you go bone on bone. That is arthritis. Acute traumatic injuries, like what I had, can also cause arthritis. That's why I have hip replacements. It wasn't that I wasn't dissipating load well. 30-something years of ice hockey, of explosive forces through my joints in abnormal movements, hip extension with external rotation with force, can break things down. And then the mechanics of the ball and socket of a joint is off kilter. You shear the joint, you break things down. Hence, you go arthritic. And then, fortunately, we live in a day and age where you have options like joint replacements. But even with joint replacements, you still want to improve your movement abilities. You don't want to just say, oh, it's a joint replacement, now I'm back to normal. You're not. You have to have the proper alignment, stability, and mobility to dissipate load. It's not just get a joint replacement and you're fine. Sadly, cameras, you're spending time with Dusty, will find we don't talk about this in orthopedics. It's like, oh, you got your joint replacements, all is good. It's not. You're setting yourself up for another joint replacement, but that's probably where the conversation needs to go. Joint replacement solves the problem of getting you out of pain. It doesn't improve your joint mechanics and your ability to dissipate load and improve your suspension system. Weighted vests. I love weighted vests. But again, do you have the ability to dissipate the load of a weighted vest? If your posture is like this all day, and you come in and say, okay, let's go train now, and we put you in a weighted vest, and there's this. I mean, if you're athletic and you're doing your posture stabilization exercises, and there's a window of training, the adaptation into load of a weighted vest is beautiful. Love it. Walking on a treadmill. It's going to facilitate an adaptation response of what? Greater bone density, greater muscle activation. In the right environment, a weight vest is wonderful if the proper sequence of training to get there is there. Yeah. For you, it's definitely something to explore. I think it could be a bridge window of maybe a couple weeks, and start light. But yes, I think that for you, Michelle, personally, that would be a good idea. One more last question. Gavin. Okay, what's the balance between doing yoga, Pilates, strength training with weights? Is that what you're asking? Yeah. In a day, in a week? Is it? Day by day, yeah. And so again, it's going to come down to a couple individual things, right? It's going to come down to intensity. You know, what is the intensity in your recovery time? For example, yoga, body weight, breath work. How much damage am I doing to my joints and breakdown of my muscles doing yoga? Not very little. I'm actually facilitating oxygen, posture reactions. I can do yoga every day and start with that to create a good environment that can feed into more aggressive loading in the gym, Olympic lifting, whatever it's going to be. But that really revs your nervous system up in muscle recruitment, where you actually damage the muscle fibers and then they heal with good sleep and good nutrition, right? But that might take you a day or two to recover, and it also depends on your age. You're going to recover much faster than I am. You might recover in 48 hours, 24 to 48 hours, where the muscle tissue is starting to repair, the adaptions are occurring. It's going to take me a minimal of 72 hours, you know, and someone who's not as healthy as me, my age, maybe a week. So you have to look at the individual. But someone like you, relatively healthy and strong, you could do yoga every day, you could do Pilates, you can do walking every day, but if you're going to do sprint work, higher in intensity work, you probably need 48 hours to recover. It doesn't mean you can't do anything the next day. It just means rev the nervous system down a little bit and don't jack it up as high. Yeah. Okay, Dusty. Of course, Dusty gets the last question. Every day. But what is exercise? Exercise could be, there's these movies, Blue Zones, right? And they've studied people in healthy environments. And some people, it's just their daily lives. One of the places of a blue zone is someplace in Europe, I forget where, but they live on a top of a mountaintop. So every day they go to the bakery or they go to work, they have to walk uphill. So their lifestyle is exercise, and they live longer. These are centurions, people who live to be 100. So exercise, like walking up Smuggler, if you feel good doing it, you could do it every day. However, it's not a substitute for doing left to right, flexibility work. It's good for your aerobic system, and it should be complemented with some other types of exercise. But exercise we should do every day. If I'm sitting here and I'm just holding myself and breathing, I'm exercising. It's the intensity of the exercise that dictates how often you need to recover. And, if you run a marathon, you better recover, or you're going to, jack your hormones up, and then you're going to go into overtraining syndrome, orthopedically, hormonally, nervous system-wise. Overtraining syndrome is very real. But from the purpose of just moving, breathing, you can exercise every day as you should. And one last zone on blue zones. There is one place in the country, it's in the book Outliers, and I believe it's Italian descent. They studied this population from Italy, and they were awful. They didn't do any of the things that you're supposed to. They, Italian old culture, they were drinking wine every day and smoking a little bit, and their diet was pretty good, but not great. And they were exercising a little bit. But what they found is every day they drank coffee together. Every day at the end of the day, they talked about their days together. There's that culture of grandma to the granddaughter. They're centurions. They can't explain it, but it just goes to show the power of relationships. Now, of course, we all agree you still shouldn't do that, and there's exceptions here, but That culture, I believe it's someplace in Pennsylvania, is an exception. The power of connecting to people and having purpose is extremely powerful. It's something that we talk about here on Sundays, but it can override things, and it affects your biology. It affects your inflammation. It affects every cell. There is an energy about connecting to people that is so positive, it transpires our understanding, much like the universe I started with. I'll stick around for more questions. Good night. You guys have been great. Careful driving home. Thank you.
And now I'm just a man who's trying to fully understand the soul inside of you, the light in you. 'Cause all I'm trying to do is be the best at loving you, loving you, loving you.